The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, certified mail, the kind that requires a signature and makes your stomach drop before you even open it. Cameron Hayes stood in his penthouse office on the 42nd floor, staring at the letterhead. Final notice of foreclosure. 3 weeks. That's all he had left before Hayes Technologies, the company his father built from nothing, the company that employed 300 families, would cease to exist. The irony tasted bitter. Cameron Hayes, the man Forbes called the golden boy of Silicon Valley, the billionaire who'd graced the cover of Tech Innovator magazine just 18 months ago, was about to lose everything. Not because of bad luck or a market crash, but because of his own complacency. While he'd been collecting sports cars and attending charity galas, his competitors had been innovating. While he'd been trusting his executive team blindly, they'd been making decisions that slowly bled the company dry. The numbers on the screen before him were merciless. 12 million in debt. Investors pulling out. Major clients switching to competitors. The revolutionary software that was supposed to save them had failed beta testing so spectacularly that their reputation was in tatters. His lawyers had made it clear. Without a massive influx of capital or a miracle, Hayes Technologies would be liquidated before New Year's Day. Cameron's hands trembled as he read his grandmother's letter for the third time that morning. Evelyn Hayes, the matriarch who controlled the family trust worth $60 million, had one condition for releasing the funds that could save his company. He had to be married by Christmas. Her letter was blunt. You've spent 10 years building a business and 0 years building a life. Money without family is just numbers on a screen. Prove to me you understand what matters and the trust is yours. It was manipulative. It was controlling. It was also his only option. That's when Cameron did something he never imagined he would do. He opened his laptop and typed an advertisement that made his stomach churn. Successful businessman seeking wife for holiday season. Generous compensation. Mutually beneficial arrangement. Serious inquiries only. 2,300 miles away in a cramped studio apartment in Chicago, Gabrielle Thompson sat on her second-hand couch, staring at the same advertisement. Her laptop was balanced on her knees, and her phone showed a bank account with $347 to her name. The eviction notice on her counter gave her 30 days to come up with 3 months back rent or lose the only home she had. Gabrielle wasn't naive. She knew exactly what kind of arrangement this advertisement suggested. But as she looked at her graduate degree in business analytics hanging on the wall, at the stack of rejection letters from companies that said she was overqualified or went with someone who fit their culture better, she felt the weight of desperation settle in her chest. She'd grown up in the foster system. She'd put herself through college working 3 jobs. She'd earned her master's degree with honors. And still, at 32 years old, she was 1 paycheck away from homelessness because her previous company had downsized and eliminated her entire department. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. With shaking fingers, Gabrielle composed a response to the advertisement. She kept it professional, brief, honest about her situation. She hit send before she could talk herself out of it. What neither Cameron nor Gabrielle knew was that this desperate exchange would set in motion events that would save not just a company, but 2 people who had lost faith in the possibility of genuine connection. Have you ever been so desperate that you'd risk everything on a stranger? What would you do if your last chance at survival came from the most unexpected place? Drop a comment below and let me know, and don't forget to subscribe for the rest of this journey. You won't believe what happens when these 2 worlds collide. Cameron Hayes pressed his forehead against the cold glass window of his office, watching the Chicago skyline glitter in the late November darkness. Behind him, his desk was covered in spreadsheets, legal documents, and the shattered remains of what was supposed to be his legacy. Hayes Technologies occupied 3 floors of this building, employed 300 people, and was currently worth less than the furniture in the lobby. How did I let this happen? He muttered to no one. The answer was complicated and simple all at once. He'd inherited a thriving company from his father at 25, rode the wave of early success, and then stopped paying attention. He'd hired expensive executives who made expensive mistakes. He'd approved projects without understanding them. He'd believed his own press releases about being a visionary, when the truth was he'd been coasting on his father's actual vision for a decade. Now, at 35, he was about to learn a very expensive lesson about complacency. His phone buzzed. An email notification. He glanced at the screen and saw it was a response to his advertisement. He'd posted it on 3 different platforms 2 hours ago, half expecting to be flooded with responses from people looking for easy money. Instead, he'd received exactly 4 replies. 3 were clearly scams and 1 was from someone named Gabrielle Thompson. Cameron opened the email. Dear Mr. Hayes, I saw your advertisement and I understand this is an unusual situation. I'm responding because I'm in an unusual situation myself. I recently lost my job as a senior business analyst when my company downsized. I have a master's degree in business analytics from Northwestern, 8 years of experience in corporate restructuring and market analysis, and about 3 weeks before I lose my apartment. I'm not interested in pretending to be something I'm not, but I am interested in a mutually beneficial arrangement if you're serious about your offer. I can provide references, background information, and we can discuss terms that work for both of us. If you're looking for someone who needs this opportunity as much as you apparently do, I'm that person. Respectfully, Gabrielle Thompson. Cameron read the email 3 times. It wasn't what he'd expected. There was no flirtation, no games, just honest desperation that matched his own. And something else caught his attention: senior business analyst and corporate restructuring. He pulled up her LinkedIn profile. Gabrielle Thompson's photo showed a beautiful African-American woman with intelligent eyes and a confident smile. Her resume was impressive. Northwestern graduate, worked for 3 major consulting firms, specialized in turning around failing companies. Recommendations from former colleagues praised her analytical mind and innovative thinking. A thought struck him, wild and improbable. What if this arrangement could solve more than just his grandmother's condition? What if he'd accidentally found someone who could actually help save his company? He typed a response. Miss Thompson, thank you for your honest email. I'd like to meet in person to discuss this arrangement. Are you available tomorrow at 2 p.m.? I'm in Chicago as well. I can send a car to pick you up. I should be up front. This situation is complicated and I need someone who can handle complicated. From your resume, it looks like you might be exactly that person. Cameron Hayes. He hit send and immediately felt ridiculous. What was he doing? He was about to invite a complete stranger into his life, into his business, based on a desperate email exchange. His phone rang. His grandmother. Cameron, darling, have you given any thought to my proposal? Evelyn Hayes' voice was warm but firm. I'm working on it, grandmother. Christmas is 3 weeks away. The trust lawyers need documentation of a legal marriage by December 25th, or the funds remain locked until you meet the conditions. I'm not trying to control your life, dear. I'm trying to save you from wasting it. Cameron closed his eyes. I know. Your father would have wanted you to have a partner, someone to share the burden of building something meaningful. Money alone never made anyone happy. Yes, grandmother. I hope you're taking this seriously. I am. I promise. After she hung up, Cameron stared at his email, waiting for Gabrielle's response. It came 10 minutes later. Mr. Hayes, I can be available tomorrow at 2 p.m. I appreciate the offer of a car, but I can make my own way to your office. Please send me the address. I should also be upfront. I don't do complicated well unless I understand all the variables. If we're going to discuss an arrangement, I need complete honesty about what you're expecting. GT. Cameron smiled for the first time in weeks. He sent her the address and then did something he hadn't done in months. He started cleaning his office, organizing the chaos of papers and reports, preparing to meet someone who might be either his salvation or another disaster. Across the city, Gabrielle sat on her couch, staring at the address Cameron had sent. The Hayes Technologies building. She'd read about Cameron Hayes, seen him in magazines, knew his reputation as a young billionaire who'd inherited his success. What she didn't know was why someone like him needed to advertise for a wife. She opened her laptop and started researching. It took less than an hour to piece together the story: failing company, desperate financial situation, and a recent profile piece that mentioned his grandmother's influence over the family trust. The pieces fit together like a puzzle. Gabrielle wasn't sure what she was walking into, but she knew one thing. If Cameron Hayes needed help saving his company, she was probably more qualified than half the people currently working for him. And if he was willing to pay for a temporary arrangement, she could use that time to prove her value in other ways. She pulled out her best interview outfit, a bright red blazer, black slacks, and heels that made her feel powerful. Then she opened her portfolio and started reviewing everything she knew about tech companies in crisis. Tomorrow would either be the beginning of a solution or confirmation that she'd hit rock bottom. Either way, she was going to walk in prepared. That night, neither Cameron nor Gabrielle slept well. Both lay awake wondering if desperation had driven them to make a decision they'd regret, or if sometimes the craziest risks led to the most unexpected rewards. Cameron kept thinking about Gabrielle's email, "I'm that person." Something about those 3 words felt significant, like maybe she wasn't just talking about needing the arrangement, but about being someone who could genuinely help. Gabrielle kept thinking about the company financials she'd found in public records. Hayes Technologies was bleeding money, but the core business model was sound. The problems were fixable if someone was willing to make hard decisions. By the time morning came, both had reached the same conclusion. This meeting was about much more than a holiday arrangement. It was about two people at the end of their ropes, reaching for something that might pull them back from the edge. The question was whether they'd pull each other up or drag each other down. Gabrielle arrived at the Hayes Technologies building at exactly 1:55 p.m. She believed in punctuality, especially when meeting someone who might be her only chance at financial survival. The lobby was impressive. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, a reception desk that looked like it cost more than her car. But she also noticed the subtle signs of a company in trouble. The receptionist looked stressed. Several office spaces on the ground floor sat empty. The energy felt wrong, like everyone was waiting for bad news. "I'm here to see Cameron Hayes," Gabrielle told the receptionist, a young woman with tired eyes and a professional smile. "Your name?" "Gabrielle Thompson." The receptionist's eyebrows rose slightly, the first crack in her professional demeanor. "Of course, Miss Thompson. Mr. Hayes is expecting you. Take the elevator to the 42nd floor. He'll meet you there." As Gabrielle rode the elevator up, she studied her reflection in the polished doors. Her red blazer was bright and professional. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked capable, which was exactly the image she wanted to project. This wasn't just about the arrangement Cameron had advertised. This was a job interview, whether he knew it yet or not. The elevator doors opened to a reception area that was somehow both luxurious and chaotic. Through the glass walls, Gabrielle could see people hurrying between offices, phones ringing constantly, the unmistakable energy of crisis management. Cameron Hayes stood waiting for her. He was taller than she'd expected from his photos, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times and eyes that carried the weight of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. He wore an expensive suit, but his tie was loose and his sleeves were rolled up. He looked like money and desperation in equal measure. "Miss Thompson," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Hayes." His handshake was firm, his palms slightly sweaty. "Nervous?" "Good." That meant he was taking this seriously. "Please come to my office. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water?" "Water would be great, thank you." Cameron's office was corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of Chicago. But Gabrielle's attention was immediately drawn to his desk, which was covered in financial documents, spreadsheets, and what looked like confidential reports. Years of professional training made her eyes automatically scan the visible numbers. Revenue projections, investor withdrawal notices, debt obligations. "I apologize for the mess," Cameron said, moving to gather the papers. "It's been a difficult few weeks." $12 million in debt, Gabrielle said quietly, reading an upside-down spreadsheet. "Projected losses of another $8 million by Q2 if the current trend continues. 3 major investors pulling out and..." She tilted her head, reading another document. "You're about to lose your biggest client to a competitor." Cameron froze, papers in his hands. "How did you?" "I can read upside down, and I spent 8 years analyzing exactly these kinds of situations." Gabrielle met his eyes. "Mr. Hayes, before we discuss the arrangement you advertised, I need to know something. Is your company failing because of market conditions, or because of internal problems?" For a long moment, Cameron just stared at her. Then, slowly, he set the papers down and laughed, a sound that was more exhaustion than humor. "You know, I expected this meeting to be about negotiating compensation for a temporary marriage. I did not expect to be discussing my company's imminent collapse with a stranger in the first 5 minutes." "Is it internal problems?" Gabrielle pressed. Cameron sank into his chair and gestured for Gabrielle to sit. "Yes, mostly. We lost our edge. Our flagship product became obsolete while my executive team assured me everything was fine. By the time I realized how bad things were, we were already in free fall." Gabrielle sat down, her portfolio balanced on her lap. "May I be blunt? Please. You need more than a wife. You need someone who can help you fix this mess. And I need more than just a paycheck for pretending to be married. I need a real job with real responsibilities where I can use my actual skills." She leaned forward. "So here's what I'm proposing. I'll agree to your arrangement, whatever your reasons are for needing a wife by Christmas. In exchange, you hire me as a business consultant and let me do a complete analysis of your company. If I can find a way to save it, you pay me what I'm worth. If I can't, we part ways after the holidays, no harm done." Cameron looked at her like she'd grown a second head. You want to marry me and save my company? I want a job where my skills matter and financial stability. The marriage is apparently the price of admission. The company turnaround is what I actually do for a living. Gabrielle pulled a folder from her portfolio. I brought my resume, references, and 3 case studies of companies I helped restructure. You can verify everything I've said. Cameron took the folder, but he didn't open it. He kept looking at Gabrielle like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Why would you help someone you don't know? Because I'm 3 weeks away from homelessness, and I'd rather earn my way out of that situation by doing what I'm good at than by pretending to be someone's wife for appearances. Gabrielle's voice was steady. Also because from what I can see on your desk, your company is salvageable. You don't have a product problem, you have a positioning problem. That's fixable. You can tell that from reading my documents upside down for 30 seconds? I can tell that from 20 minutes of research last night and 30 seconds of seeing your current financial structure. Gabrielle pulled out her laptop. Do you want me to show you? Cameron nodded, still looking stunned. For the next 45 minutes, Gabrielle walked him through her preliminary analysis. She pulled Hayes Technologies' public filings, market analysis reports, and competitor data. She showed him exactly where his company had lost ground. Not in innovation but in customer retention and market positioning. His products were actually good. His team just didn't know how to sell them to the right clients anymore. You're spending millions on R&D for products nobody asked for, Gabrielle said, pointing to a chart on her screen. Meanwhile, your core customer base is jumping to competitors who offer inferior products but better customer service and integration support. You're solving tomorrow's problems while ignoring today's needs. Cameron's face had gone from skeptical to intensely focused. So what would you do? First, I'd restructure your product teams. Focus on your 3 strongest existing products and make them work better together. Second, I'd overhaul your customer service integration. Create a platform that makes it easy for clients to use multiple Hayes products simultaneously. Third, I'd cut the projects that are draining resources without generating revenue. She looked at him directly. And I'd do all of this in about 6 weeks before your foreclosure deadline. That's impossible. No, it's difficult. There's a difference. Gabrielle closed her laptop. But it requires 2 things. Complete authority to make decisions and your willingness to trust someone you just met. Cameron stood and walked to the window, his back to Gabrielle. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. My grandmother controls a family trust worth $60 million. She'll only release it if I'm married by Christmas. She thinks I've wasted my life building a company without building a family. The truth is she's not entirely wrong. I've spent 10 years assuming success would last forever, and now I'm paying the price for my arrogance. He turned to face Gabrielle. If you marry me, even temporarily, I can access that trust and keep this company alive long enough to implement your plan. If your plan works, I'll pay you a consultant's salary plus a percentage of any profits we generate. If it doesn't work, at least we tried and you'll still get compensation for being willing to help a desperate stranger. Gabrielle stood and walked to the desk. I need you to understand something, Mr. Hayes. I don't do half measures. If I agree to this, I'm going to push you and your team harder than you've ever been pushed. I'm going to make decisions that upset people. I'm going to cut projects and possibly eliminate positions. Saving a company in crisis is not pretty or comfortable. Can you handle that? Can you handle being legally married to someone you don't know? For a job this good? Yes. Gabrielle extended her hand. Do we have a deal? Cameron looked at her hand, then at her face. In Gabrielle's eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in his own reflection for months. Determination, hope, the absolute certainty that failure was not an option. It was either inspiring or terrifying. Possibly both. He shook her hand. We have a deal. Good. I'll need access to all your financial records, personnel files, and project documentation by tomorrow morning. I'll also need an office and authorization to speak with department heads. You want to start immediately? Mr. Hayes, you have 3 weeks until foreclosure. I don't have time to ease into this job. Gabrielle picked up her portfolio. Now, about the marriage arrangement. I assume there's paperwork? Cameron almost laughed. You're really all business, aren't you? I'm really all survival, Gabrielle corrected. But yes, I believe in clear agreements. What exactly are the terms you had in mind? They spent the next hour drafting a contract that was part prenuptial agreement, part employment contract. Gabrielle would move into Cameron's penthouse to maintain appearances of a legitimate marriage. She would attend any necessary family events. In exchange, she would receive a consultant's salary of $15,000 per month, plus bonuses based on company performance improvements. The arrangement would last through Christmas, with an option to extend if both parties agreed. When they finished, Cameron sat back in his chair, looking simultaneously relieved and terrified. I can't believe I'm doing this. Neither can I, Gabrielle admitted. But I've learned that sometimes the craziest options are the only options left. Cameron's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. My grandmother. She wants to have dinner with us this week. Then we should probably get our story straight, Gabrielle said practically. How did we meet? Over the next hour, they crafted a believable backstory. They'd met at a business conference 6 months ago, had been dating quietly, and decided to make it official before the holidays. It was simple enough to remember and vague enough to discourage detailed questions. By the time Gabrielle left Cameron's office, the sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She stood in the elevator watching the floor numbers descend, and tried to process what she'd just agreed to. In the span of 3 hours, she'd gone from unemployed and desperate to married to be and employed as a consultant for a failing tech company. It was either the best decision she'd ever made or the worst. Time would tell. Cameron stood at his office window watching the city lights begin to twinkle. In his hand was Gabrielle's resume. He read it again more carefully this time, and felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Maybe his grandmother was right. Maybe what he needed wasn't just money or a business solution, but a partner. Someone who wasn't afraid to tell him the truth, who saw his company's problems clearly and believed they could be fixed. He thought about Gabrielle's eyes, the way they'd lit up when she talked about restructuring strategies, the absolute confidence in her voice when she said his company was salvageable. For better or worse, he just bet everything on a stranger. Now he had to trust that desperation had led him to exactly the right person. Tomorrow the real work would begin. The next morning, Gabrielle arrived at Hayes Technologies at 7 a.m., wearing a bright green dress that caught the early sunlight streaming through the lobby windows. She carried a briefcase full of notes she'd made the previous night, plus 3 different restructuring plans depending on what she found in the company's detailed records. The same receptionist from yesterday looked surprised to see her. Miss Thompson, we weren't expecting. I'm consulting for Mr. Hayes starting today. He should have sent authorization for building access and security clearance. The receptionist checked her computer and nodded. Yes, here it is. Welcome to Hayes Technologies, Miss Thompson. Gabrielle smiled. Thank you. Can you tell me where the financial records department is located? 38th floor. But I should warn you, they don't usually arrive until 9. Then I'll have time to review the files before they get there. Gabrielle headed for the elevator. She spent the next 2 hours buried in financial records, and what she found was both better and worse than she'd expected. The company's core technology was actually solid, but the business decisions surrounding it were catastrophic. Resources were being poured into projects with no clear market demand. Customer service had been outsourced to a company that was terrible at their job. The sales team was operating on outdated strategies that hadn't worked in 5 years. Cameron found her at 9:15 a.m., surrounded by printouts and sticky notes, her laptop open to a complex spreadsheet. You're early, he said. You're late, Gabrielle replied without looking up. We need to talk about your customer retention strategy. Or rather, your complete lack of one. Cameron sat down across from her. Good morning to you too. Gabrielle finally looked up, and her expression softened slightly. Sorry? I get intense when I'm working. Good morning, Mr. Hayes. If we're going to be married, you should probably call me Cameron. If we're going to save your company, you should probably listen to what I'm about to tell you. Gabrielle turned her laptop around so he could see the screen. Your customer churn rate is 43%. That means almost half the clients who buy your products don't renew their contracts. Do you know why? We assumed it was price competition. It's not. I pulled customer exit surveys from your service department. The #1 complaint is integration difficulty. Your products don't work well together, and they don't work well with other common business software. Clients get frustrated and leave. Cameron leaned forward, studying the data. So what's the solution? You need an integration platform. Something that sits on top of all your existing products and makes them work together seamlessly. It would also need to integrate with popular third-party software like Salesforce, Microsoft Office, and Google Workspace. Gabrielle pulled up a rough mock-up sheet sketched. I'm calling it the Hayes Unity Platform. One dashboard, everything connected, incredibly user-friendly. That would take months to develop. Not if we use existing integration APIs and focus on functionality over fancy features. I estimate 6 weeks with a dedicated team. Gabrielle met his eyes. I also estimate it would cut your churn rate in half and make you competitive with the companies currently stealing your clients. Cameron sat back, his mind racing. You came up with this overnight? I came up with the concept. The details will require your development team's input. Gabrielle pulled out a handwritten list. Which brings me to my next point. I need to meet with all your department heads today. Every single one. That's ambitious. Cameron, you have 17 business days until foreclosure. We don't have time to be cautious. Gabrielle's voice was firm but not unkind. I know this is overwhelming. But you hired me to save your company, and that means we need to move fast and decisively. Before Cameron could respond, his phone rang. His grandmother again. Take it, Gabrielle said. I'll start scheduling the meetings. Cameron answered. Good morning, grandmother. Cameron, darling, I heard you have a new consultant starting today. A woman named Gabrielle Thompson? Cameron shot Gabrielle a look. How did you? I still have friends on your board, dear. They're concerned you're making impulsive decisions. Gabrielle is highly qualified. She's exactly what the company needs right now. I'm sure she is. I'd like to meet her. Dinner tonight, my house. I'll expect you both at 7. It wasn't a request. After the call ended, Cameron looked at Gabrielle apologetically. My grandmother wants to meet you tonight. That makes sense. She's the one holding the trust fund. Gabrielle made a note on her calendar. We'll need to be convincing. About the engagement? About everything. Your grandmother is clearly smart. She's going to see through any obvious lies. Gabrielle closed her laptop. We should probably spend some time today getting to know each other. Basic facts, family history, things a real couple would know. Over lunch. Over work. We can multitask. Gabrielle stood. Come on. Time to meet your department heads and figure out which ones are part of the solution and which ones are part of the problem. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Gabrielle met with 8 different department heads, asking pointed questions and taking detailed notes. Some were receptive to her ideas. Others were defensive and dismissive. By 4 p.m., Gabrielle had a clear picture of the company's internal dynamics and a list of people who would need to be replaced or reassigned. She presented her findings to Cameron in his office. Your VP of Product Development is actively sabotaging efficiency, she said bluntly. He's protecting his pet projects instead of focusing on what the company needs. Your head of customer service is overwhelmed and undersupported. And your CFO is hiding the real numbers from you because he doesn't want to admit how bad things are. Cameron's face went pale. You're saying my executive team is lying to me? I'm saying they're protecting themselves instead of the company. It's common in failing businesses. People get scared and start making decisions based on self-preservation rather than company health. Gabrielle softened her tone. This isn't your fault, Cameron. But it is your responsibility to fix it. What do you recommend? Replace the VP of Product Development immediately. Promote your head of customer service and give her the resources she needs. And have a very serious conversation with your CFO about transparency. Cameron stood and paced to the window. If I fire my VP, the board will have questions. Then give them answers. Show them my restructuring plan. Explain that you're making necessary changes to save the company. Gabrielle walked over to stand beside him. I know this is hard. But you asked me to help, and this is what help looks like. Sometimes you have to make people uncomfortable to create real change. Cameron looked at her reflection in the window. You're very certain about all of this. I'm certain that doing nothing guarantees failure. Making hard choices at least gives you a chance at success. She turned to face him directly. Do you trust me? It was a loaded question, given they'd known each other less than 24 hours. But Cameron found himself nodding. I do. Which is either very smart or very foolish. Let's hope it's smart. Gabrielle checked her watch. We should leave soon for your grandmother's dinner. Do I need to change? Cameron looked at her green dress. You look professional. My grandmother values substance over style anyway. Good. Because I plan to be honest with her. Within reason. How honest? Honest enough to be credible, vague enough to protect our arrangement. Gabrielle picked up her briefcase. Let me grab my coat and we can go. An hour later, they arrived at Evelyn Hayes' house, a stunning Victorian mansion in Lincoln Park. Gabrielle had expected wealth, but the sheer elegance of the home was still impressive. Evelyn herself opened the door, a petite woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and a warm smile. Cameron, darling. She hugged her grandson, then turned to Gabrielle. And you must be Gabrielle. Welcome to my home. Thank you for inviting me, Mrs. Hayes. Gabrielle shook her hand with a firm grip. Please call me Evelyn. Come in, both of you. Dinner is almost ready. Over the next 2 hours, Gabrielle understood exactly why Cameron had been so nervous. Evelyn Hayes was charming, intelligent, and absolutely relentless in her questioning. She wanted to know everything: how they met, what attracted them to each other, their plans for the future, their views on family and career. Gabrielle answered truthfully when she could and creatively when she couldn't. She talked about meeting Cameron at a business conference, being impressed by his passion for his company, discovering they shared values about work and integrity. She didn't lie about loving him because Evelyn never directly asked. She simply allowed the older woman to draw her own conclusions. Cameron was less smooth, stumbling over questions about their relationship timeline, but Gabrielle covered for him smoothly, laughing and making it seem like his nervousness was endearing rather than suspicious. By dessert, Evelyn sat back in her chair and studied them both. I've been worried about Cameron for years. He's brilliant with technology but terrible at relationships. He needed someone who could challenge him, someone who wouldn't be intimidated by his success or his family name. I'm definitely not intimidated, Gabrielle said with a small smile. No, I can see that. Evelyn turned to Cameron. She's good for you. I hope you're smart enough to appreciate that. I'm trying to be, Cameron said quietly. After dinner, as they drove back to Cameron's penthouse, Gabrielle finally allowed herself to relax. Your grandmother is formidable. She liked you. I could tell. How? She didn't interrogate you about your family history or your financial background. When she doesn't trust someone, she goes full investigator mode. Cameron glanced at Gabrielle. You were amazing tonight. Natural, confident, exactly the kind of partner she wanted me to find. I was honest. Mostly. Gabrielle looked out the window at the passing city lights. Your grandmother loves you very much. I know. That's what makes this whole situation both easier and harder. She's manipulating me with the trust fund, but she's doing it because she genuinely believes I need someone in my life. Do you? Cameron was quiet for a long moment. I didn't think so. I thought my company was enough. But these past few weeks have shown me how lonely it is to carry everything alone. Gabrielle didn't respond, but something in her chest tightened. She understood that loneliness, had lived with it her entire life. When they arrived at Cameron's penthouse, Gabrielle stood in the entryway and took in the space that would be her home for the next few weeks. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, a view that stretched across the entire city. It was beautiful and cold like a magazine spread. The guest room is down that hall, Cameron said, pointing. I had my assistant bring up some of your things from your apartment. I hope that's okay. That's helpful, thank you. Gabrielle set down her briefcase. We should talk about tomorrow's schedule. Gabrielle, it's after 10. Can we take one evening off from work? She looked at him, surprised by the exhaustion in his voice. Of course. I'm sorry. I have a tendency to forget normal people need rest. You need rest too. I'll rest when your company is solvent. But she smiled to soften the words. Good night, Cameron. Good night. As Gabrielle unpacked in the guest room, she thought about the day. 24 hours ago, she'd been unemployed and nearly homeless. Now she was engaged to a billionaire and employed as a consultant for a failing tech company. It was surreal and terrifying and oddly exhilarating. She pulled out her laptop and started working on a detailed implementation plan for the Unity platform. Sleep could wait. There was too much to do, too much at stake. In his own room, Cameron lay awake, thinking about Gabrielle's question from earlier. Do you trust me? The answer was complicated. He trusted her competence, her intelligence, her determination. But trusting someone with your company was different from trusting them with your life, your future, your heart. And yet, watching her tonight with his grandmother, seeing her navigate difficult questions with grace and honesty, he'd felt something unexpected: gratitude. Not just for her business skills, but for her presence, for the way she made impossible situations feel manageable. Maybe his grandmother was right. Maybe he had needed someone exactly like Gabrielle. The question was what would happen when Christmas passed and their arrangement ended. Would she stay? Would he want her to? Those were questions for another day. Tonight, he just needed to rest and prepare for tomorrow's battles. Tomorrow they would begin the real work of saving Hayes Technologies. And Cameron had a feeling nothing would ever be the same. Monday morning arrived with the weight of 17 days until foreclosure. Gabrielle was already in the Hayes Technologies conference room by 6 a.m., setting up presentations for the emergency meeting she'd scheduled with all department heads. Cameron arrived at 7 a.m. with coffee for both of them. You're going to burn yourself out at this pace, he said, handing her a cup. I've operated on less sleep and higher stakes. Gabrielle accepted the coffee gratefully. Are you ready for this? Some people are not going to like what I'm about to propose. Let them be unhappy. You were right yesterday. Comfort is a luxury we can't afford right now. At 8 a.m. sharp, 12 department heads filed into the conference room, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Gabrielle stood at the front of the room in a bright blue blazer, her posture confident despite the skeptical audience. Thank you all for coming, she began. I'm Gabrielle Thompson, and I've been hired as a consultant to help restructure this company's operations. I've spent the past 3 days analyzing your financials, market position, and internal processes. What I'm about to present is not open for debate. These changes are necessary for Hayes Technologies to survive past Christmas. The room erupted in murmurs, but Gabrielle continued without acknowledging them. First, effective immediately, we're canceling 7 active development projects. She displayed the list on the screen behind her. These projects have consumed over $4 million in resources over the past 18 months and have generated zero revenue. The teams assigned to these projects will be reassigned to our new priority initiative. You can't just cancel our work, interrupted the VP of Product Development, a man named Richard Carlson. Those projects represent years of research. Those projects represent years of research into products nobody wants to buy, Gabrielle corrected calmly. Your job is to develop profitable products, not interesting experiments. Cameron, do you want to explain the financial reality to your team? Cameron stood. We have 17 days until the bank forecloses on this company. Without dramatic changes, 300 people will lose their jobs right before Christmas. Gabrielle's plan gives us a chance to avoid that outcome. I'm choosing to take that chance. The room went silent. Gabrielle continued. Second, we're launching a new integration platform called Hayes Unity. This platform will connect all our existing products and integrate with major third-party software. Development begins today and we have 6 weeks to deliver a working beta. I'll be leading this project personally. She clicked to the next slide, showing preliminary designs and technical specifications she'd worked on through the night. Third, we're restructuring customer service. The outsourcing contract is being terminated today. We're bringing customer service in-house and staffing it with people who actually understand our products. Jennifer Chin, you're being promoted to VP of Customer Experience with authority to build your team however you see fit. Jennifer Chin, a woman in her early 40s who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, looked shocked. Ms. Thompson, I appreciate the confidence, but I've never managed at that level. You've been managing a dysfunctional outsourced team for 2 years and still maintaining a 73% customer satisfaction rate. That tells me you're exactly the person we need. Gabrielle met her eyes. Do you accept the position? Jennifer glanced at Cameron, who nodded encouragingly. Yes. Thank you. Fourth, Gabrielle continued, we're implementing a hiring freeze except for critical positions directly related to Unity platform development and customer service. Any exceptions must be approved by me and Cameron personally. Richard Carlson stood up, his face red. This is outrageous. You've been here 3 days and you think you can just dismantle everything we've built? I've been here 3 days, which gives me the advantage of seeing clearly what you've been too close to notice. This company is failing because of poor decision-making at the executive level. Including yours. Gabrielle's voice was steel. Your pet projects have drained resources while customer satisfaction has plummeted. That ends today. Cameron, are you going to let her talk to me like this? Cameron stood again and his voice was quiet but firm. Richard, Gabrielle is speaking the truth. I've been reviewing the numbers and your department has the worst ROI in the company. If you can't support the changes we're making, I'll need your resignation. The room was utterly silent. This was unprecedented. Cameron Hayes never confronted his executives publicly. He'd always been the conciliator, the one who avoided conflict. Richard stared at Cameron for a long moment, then grabbed his briefcase. Fine. You want my resignation? You have it. Good luck saving this sinking ship. He stormed out. After the door slammed, Gabrielle calmly clicked to her next slide. Anyone else have concerns about the restructuring plan? No one spoke. Excellent. Let's talk about implementation timelines. For the next 2 hours, Gabrielle walked the team through detailed plans for each initiative. She assigned responsibilities, set deadlines, and made it clear that failure was not an option. By the time the meeting ended, half the room looked energized and half looked terrified. Jennifer Chin approached Gabrielle afterward. That was the most intense meeting I've ever attended. It's about to get more intense. I need you to audit our current customer service processes and give me a complete report by tomorrow morning. Then we're going to rebuild your department from scratch. Tomorrow morning? We have 17 days, Jennifer. If that's too fast for you, I need to know now. Jennifer straightened her shoulders. It's not too fast. I'll have the report ready. As people filed out, Cameron and Gabrielle were left alone in the conference room. You just made a lot of enemies, Cameron said. I just saved a lot of jobs. They'll thank me later. Gabrielle started gathering her materials. How do you feel about Richard's resignation? Relieved, honestly. He's been undermining progress for months, but I didn't have the courage to fire him. Now you didn't have to. He fired himself. Gabrielle looked at Cameron seriously. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. Are you prepared for that? With you leading the charge? I think so. Over the next week, Hayes Technologies transformed into a pressure cooker. Gabrielle assembled a team of the company's best developers and tasked them with building the Unity platform. She personally interviewed every customer service representative and hired 15 new team members. She restructured the sales department to focus on retention instead of acquisition. Cameron watched in amazement as Gabrielle worked 16-hour days, somehow managing to be everywhere at once. She reviewed code with developers, strategized with the sales team, and personally called major clients to explain the company's new direction. She was relentless, demanding, and absolutely brilliant. But he also noticed the toll it was taking. Dark circles appeared under her eyes. She skipped meals. One night, he found her asleep at her desk at 2 a.m., still clutching a report. Gabrielle, he said gently, touching her shoulder. You need to sleep in a bed, not at a desk. She jerked awake, disoriented. What time is it? Too late. Come on. He helped her to her feet. Your brain needs rest to function properly. There's too much to do. There will still be too much to do tomorrow. Right now you need sleep. He walked her back to the penthouse and insisted she go straight to bed. As he turned to leave, she caught his hand. Cameron, thank you. For what? For trusting me. For letting me do what needs to be done, even when it's uncomfortable. He squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for caring enough about this company to push yourself this hard. After she was safely in her room, Cameron stood in his kitchen, thinking about how much had changed in just 1 week. His company was still in crisis, but for the first time in months he felt like they had a real chance at survival. And Gabrielle, this stranger who'd come into his life out of mutual desperation, was becoming someone he couldn't imagine working without. Her intensity, her intelligence, her absolute refusal to accept failure, these weren't just business qualities. They were the qualities of someone who fought for what mattered, who didn't give up when things got hard. He thought about their arrangement, about the marriage that was supposed to be temporary and transactional. Somewhere in the chaos of the past week, it had started feeling like something more. Not romance, not yet. But partnership. Real partnership. The question that kept Cameron awake that night was simple and terrifying. What would happen when Christmas passed and their reasons for staying together disappeared? Would Gabrielle stay because she wanted to, or would she leave because their contract was complete? He didn't know the answer. But he was starting to realize he very much wanted her to stay. 10 days until Christmas. 9 days until foreclosure. The clock was ticking louder every day. The Hayes Unity platform was taking shape faster than anyone had believed possible. Gabrielle's team worked around the clock, fueled by the knowledge that failure meant unemployment for everyone. But they were still weeks away from a functional beta, and Cameron's bank was not known for granting extensions. That's when Gabrielle came to Cameron with a new problem. Your grandmother's lawyer called. They need proof of marriage by December 25th to release the trust funds. A marriage license isn't enough. We need to actually get married. Cameron looked up from the code review he'd been attempting to understand. When? This week. Preferably tomorrow if we can get the license processed in time. Tomorrow? Cameron, we don't have time to plan a big wedding. We barely have time to fill out the paperwork. Gabrielle sat down across from him. I know this is awkward, but we need those trust funds to keep operating. Without them, even if we finish the Unity platform, we won't survive long enough to sell it. Cameron rubbed his face. You're right. This feels more real somehow. Going to City Hall and actually saying vows. We can keep it simple. Just the legal minimum. Gabrielle's voice was practical, but Cameron noticed she was fidgeting with her pen, a sign she was more nervous than she was letting on. My grandmother will want to be there. Then we invite her. Anyone else? Cameron thought about it. No. The fewer people who know the details of our arrangement, the better. They obtained the marriage license that afternoon and scheduled the ceremony for Thursday morning, December 18th, at the courthouse. Evelyn Hayes was delighted when Cameron called her. "Finally, something sensible," she said. "I'll be there. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself, grandmother. It's going to be very simple." "The ceremony doesn't matter, darling. The commitment does." Cameron felt a pang of guilt. The commitment was supposed to be temporary, a means to an end. But he couldn't say that to his grandmother. Thursday morning arrived cold and clear. Gabrielle stood in her room, looking at the maroon dress she'd chosen for the occasion. It wasn't a traditional wedding dress, but it was professional and elegant. She'd pulled her hair into a simple updo and wore minimal makeup. This wasn't a real wedding, she reminded herself. It was a business arrangement with legal paperwork. The fact that her hands were shaking was just nervousness about the formality, nothing more. There was a knock on her door. Cameron stood there in a dark suit with a bright blue tie. He looked nervous and handsome in equal measure. "Ready?" he asked. "As ready as I can be to marry someone I've known for 2 weeks. He smiled. "When you put it that way, it sounds completely insane." "It is completely insane. But it's also necessary, so here we are." They drove to the courthouse in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Evelyn met them in the hallway outside the ceremony room, looking elegant in a pale gray dress. "You both look beautiful," she said, hugging them each in turn. "I'm so happy for you." The ceremony itself lasted less than 10 minutes. A judge read the standard vows, Cameron and Gabrielle repeated them in steady voices, and rings were exchanged, simple bands Cameron had purchased the day before. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Cameron leaned in and kissed Gabrielle's cheek, a chaste gesture that felt both appropriate and somehow insufficient. Evelyn cried. "Your father would have been so proud," she told Cameron. Then she turned to Gabrielle. "Welcome to the family, dear." Gabrielle's throat tightened. She'd never had a family to welcome her anywhere. "Thank you, Evelyn." They signed the marriage certificate, took the required photos, and then it was done. Gabrielle Thompson was now Gabrielle Hayes, at least on paper. Evelyn insisted on taking them to lunch to celebrate, and over expensive salads and wine, she talked about family traditions and Christmas plans. Cameron and Gabrielle played their parts, smiling and nodding, pretending this was a normal wedding celebration instead of a strategic business move. But something felt different as they sat there. Maybe it was the weight of the rings on their fingers or the official nature of the paperwork. Whatever it was, the arrangement felt more real, more consequential. That afternoon, they returned to Hayes Technologies with a marriage certificate and authorization to access the family trust. Cameron's lawyers processed the paperwork immediately, and by 4 p.m., $60 million had been transferred into company accounts. The company was saved. At least temporarily. Gabrielle stood in Cameron's office, looking at the bank confirmation on his computer screen. "We did it. You met your grandmother's conditions." "We did it," Cameron agreed. "Now we just have to make sure we use this money wisely." "Already planned." Gabrielle pulled up a spreadsheet. $40 million goes into operational reserves to cover the next 12 months of operations. $10 million is allocated for Unity platform development and launch. $5 million for customer service expansion. The remaining $5 million is emergency contingency. "You had this planned already?" "I've had it planned since day one. I just needed the funds to actually appear." Gabrielle saved the spreadsheet. "Now comes the hard part, proving we can turn this company around before the trust money runs out." Over the next few days, the news of Cameron's marriage spread through the company. Some employees were surprised, others claimed they'd suspected something was developing. Gabrielle fielded questions and congratulations with practiced ease, never revealing the true nature of the arrangement. But she also noticed something unexpected. People were responding to her differently. Before, she'd been the consultant, an outsider brought in to fix problems. Now, as Cameron's wife, she was seen as part of the company's future. Employees sought her opinion more often, trusted her decisions more readily. It was simultaneously helpful and uncomfortable. The helpfulness was obvious. She had more authority to implement changes. The discomfort came from the lie underlying it all. These people thought she and Cameron were building a life together when really they were just business partners with a legal contract. 1 week before Christmas, Gabrielle made a breakthrough. She'd been working with the development team late into the night when suddenly, the Unity platform integrated successfully with all 3 major business software platforms. It worked. The beta was functional, stable, and genuinely impressive. She ran to Cameron's office, where he was reviewing sales projections. "It works," she said, slightly breathless. Cameron, the Unity platform actually works. He stood immediately. Show me. They spent the next hour testing every feature, integration point, and user interface element. The platform was elegant and powerful, exactly what Gabrielle had envisioned. More importantly, it solved the exact problem that had been driving customers away: integration complexity. This is incredible, Cameron said, genuinely amazed. Gabrielle, this could change everything. It will change everything. But only if we can get clients to try it. She pulled up a contact list. We need a major company to serve as a proof of concept. Someone whose endorsement will convince other clients to give us a chance. Do you have someone in mind? Tech Forward Corporation. They're one of the biggest players in the industry, and they recently announced they're seeking new vendor partnerships. If we can land them as a client, everyone else will follow. Cameron's expression turned skeptical. Tech Forward is notoriously difficult to work with. Their CEO, Patricia Morrison, turns down 90% of pitches. Then we'll be in the 10% she accepts. Gabrielle's eyes were bright with determination. I've been researching their needs. They have a massive customer service problem across 17 different divisions. Our Unity platform could solve that in one implementation. You want to pitch to them? I want to pitch to them this week, before Christmas, while we still have momentum and their decision makers are available. Cameron looked at this woman who'd become his wife, this force of nature who refused to accept impossible as an answer. Okay, let's do it. But I'm coming with you. I wouldn't want it any other way. They spent the next 2 days preparing the most important presentation of their lives. Gabrielle crafted a pitch that focused not on Hayes Technologies' history, but on Tech Forward specific pain points and how the Unity platform addressed each one. Cameron contributed technical details and financial projections. They practiced until they could deliver the entire presentation without notes, anticipating every possible objection, preparing for every question. On December 23, 2 days before Christmas, they walked into Tech Forward's headquarters dressed in matching bright blue business attire. Patricia Morrison, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, greeted them in a conference room that overlooked downtown Chicago. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Hayes, I understand you have a solution to my integration problems. Her tone made it clear she'd heard that promise before and remained skeptical. Mrs. Morrison, we have a solution to your integration problems because we had the same problems ourselves, Gabrielle began. 6 months ago, Hayes Technologies was hemorrhaging clients because our products didn't work well together. We were good at individual solutions but terrible at comprehensive systems. Does that sound familiar? Patricia's expression shifted slightly. Continue. For the next hour, Gabrielle and Cameron delivered their pitch flawlessly. They showed live demonstrations of the Unity platform integrating complex business systems. They presented case studies from Hayes Technologies' own customer service improvements. They answered every technical question Patricia asked with confidence and clarity. By the end, Patricia Morrison was leaning forward in her chair, actually interested. This is impressive, she admitted. But Hayes Technologies isn't exactly stable. Why should I trust my company's integration to a vendor that was on the verge of bankruptcy 3 weeks ago? Cameron answered before Gabrielle could. Because we understand what's at stake better than any stable company ever could. We built this platform out of desperation and determination. We tested it on our own operations first. And we're offering you something no stable vendor would. If the implementation fails, we refund every penny and pay your costs to transition to another solution. Patricia's eyebrows rose. That's a significant risk. It's a risk we're willing to take because we know our platform works. Cameron glanced at Gabrielle. My wife built this system. I trust her vision completely. The way he said, my wife, made something flutter in Gabrielle's chest. It sounded almost real. Patricia was silent for a long moment, then she nodded. I'll give you a trial. Implement the Unity platform for one of my smaller divisions. You have 3 weeks. If it performs as promised, we'll discuss a company-wide contract. Gabrielle and Cameron exchanged a look of barely controlled excitement. We accept, Gabrielle said immediately. Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. As they left the building, Cameron grabbed Gabrielle's hand and squeezed it. We did it. We did it, she agreed, squeezing back. Then she realized they were still holding hands and gently pulled away. Sorry. Got caught up in the moment. Don't apologize. That was the best moment I've had in months. That evening, as they prepared for Christmas Eve dinner at Evelyn's house, Gabrielle found herself thinking about Cameron's words to Patricia Morrison. I trust her vision completely. He'd said it with such conviction, such certainty. When had their arrangement shifted from transactional to genuine partnership? When had Cameron started looking at her like she was essential instead of convenient? And more frighteningly, when had she started caring what he thought of her beyond professional respect? These were dangerous thoughts for a temporary arrangement. But as Gabrielle looked at her reflection in the mirror, at the ring on her finger and the subtle happiness in her eyes, she couldn't quite convince herself that temporary was what she wanted anymore. Christmas Eve morning dawned bright and cold, and Cameron woke to find Gabrielle already working in the living room, her laptop balanced on her knees and papers spread across the coffee table. "It's Christmas Eve," he said, bringing her coffee. "Normal people take the day off. We're not normal people. We're people who just committed to implementing a complex platform for a major corporation in 3 weeks." Gabrielle accepted the coffee gratefully. "Thank you. I'm mapping out the implementation timeline for Tech Forward." Cameron sat beside her, looking at her meticulously color-coded spreadsheet. "You've been up all night, haven't you?" "Most of it. I couldn't sleep. My brain kept running through possible obstacles and solutions." She rubbed her eyes. "We need to start the Tech Forward implementation the day after Christmas. That means I need to have a complete project plan ready by tomorrow." "Gabrielle, even you need rest." "I'll rest when this is done." But she leaned back against the couch, allowing herself a moment of stillness. "What time do we need to be at your grandmother's?" "Dinner's at 6, but she wants us there by 4 for drinks and conversation. So I have 7 hours to finish this plan. Or you could take a break, eat breakfast, maybe even enjoy the holiday a little bit." Gabrielle looked at him with exhausted eyes. "I don't really do holidays. They were always difficult when I was in foster care, and as an adult I usually just worked through them. It's easier that way." Cameron felt something twist in his chest. "You've never had a real Christmas?" "Define real." "I've had Christmases. Just not the warm, family kind you see in movies." She shrugged. "It's fine. I'm used to it." "Well, you're having a real Christmas this year. My grandmother goes all out. Decorations, presents, enough food to feed an army. She'll be heartbroken if we show up and you look like you've been working instead of celebrating." "Cameron, please. Just this once, let me give you something besides work and stress." Gabrielle met his eyes and saw genuine concern there, maybe even care. "Okay, I'll take a break. But I'm bringing my laptop to your grandmother's in case I need to work on something." "Deal." They spent the morning preparing, and Cameron insisted on taking Gabrielle shopping for a Christmas gift for his grandmother. At a small boutique, Gabrielle found a beautiful scarf in soft blue wool. As Cameron paid for it, the sales clerk smiled at them. "You two make a lovely couple. How long have you been married?" 6 days, Cameron answered, and Gabrielle tried not to laugh at the truth of it. "Newlyweds. How sweet. Merry Christmas to you both." As they walked out, shopping bag in hand, Gabrielle said quietly, "Does it bother you? Lying to people about our relationship?" Cameron was quiet for a moment. "It bothered me at first. Now I'm not sure what we're lying about anymore." "What do you mean?" "I mean we're legally married. We live together. We're building a business together. We spend more time together than most married couples." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "The only thing missing is romance. And honestly, I'm not sure that's required for a successful marriage anyway." Gabrielle didn't know how to respond to that. She settled for changing the subject. "We should get back. I still need to finish that project plan." But she thought about his words for the rest of the day. What were they exactly? Business partners who happened to be legally married? Friends with a shared goal? Something more complicated that neither of them wanted to define? That evening, they arrived at Evelyn's house to find it transformed into a winter wonderland. Lights twinkled in every window, a massive tree dominated the living room, and the smell of roasting turkey filled the air. "Merry Christmas, my dears," Evelyn said, hugging them both. "Gabrielle, you look tired. Have you been working too hard?" "Always," Cameron answered for her. "I keep telling her to rest." "And I keep telling him we have deadlines," Gabrielle countered with a smile. Evelyn shook her head fondly. "You two are perfect for each other. Both workaholics who need someone to force them to take breaks." She led them into the living room. "Now sit, have some wine, and tell me about this big project I've been hearing about." Over wine and appetizers, Cameron and Gabrielle explained the Tech Forward opportunity. Evelyn listened intently, asking intelligent questions about implementation challenges and market positioning. "You've accomplished something remarkable," Evelyn said finally. 3 weeks ago, Cameron's company was failing. Now you're landing major contracts and developing innovative products. Gabrielle, You've been good for my grandson and his business. Cameron's been good for me too, Gabrielle said honestly. He gave me an opportunity when I desperately needed one. It seems you both needed each other. Evelyn's eyes sparkled with knowing amusement. That's what marriage should be, two people who make each other stronger. During dinner, Evelyn shared stories about Cameron's father, about building Hayes Technologies from nothing, about the values that had always guided the family business: integrity, innovation, and care for employees. Your father would be proud of what you're doing, Evelyn told Cameron. Not just saving the company but transforming it into something better than it was. After dinner, Evelyn handed them each a wrapped present. Cameron opened his to find a vintage watch that had belonged to his father. His eyes grew misty as he turned it over in his hands. Gabrielle opened hers to find a delicate necklace with a small pendant shaped like a compass. So you always know which direction you're heading, Evelyn explained. You strike me as someone who always needs a clear path forward. It's beautiful, Gabrielle said, genuinely touched. Thank you, Evelyn. As they drove home later that night, Cameron was quiet, lost in thought. Your grandmother is special, Gabrielle said softly. She's the only family I have left. My parents died when I was 23. Car accident. She's been my anchor ever since. I'm sorry. I didn't know. It's part of why she's so insistent about family, about not being alone. She watched me throw myself into work instead of building relationships, and it worried her. Cameron glanced at Gabrielle. I think you remind her of herself. Strong, independent, fiercely intelligent. I don't feel very strong right now. I feel exhausted and overwhelmed and terrified we're going to fail. We're not going to fail. We're going to wake up tomorrow, start the tech-forward implementation, and prove that Hayes Technologies deserves to survive. You sound very certain. I'm certain. Because I've watched you do impossible things for the past 3 weeks. If anyone can make this work, it's you. Back at the penthouse, Gabrielle headed to her room but paused in the doorway. Cameron, thank you for today. For making me take a break, for introducing me to your grandmother's Christmas traditions. It was nice. You're welcome. Merry Christmas, Gabrielle. Merry Christmas. As she closed the door, Gabrielle touched the compass necklace Evelyn had given her. For someone who'd spent her whole life finding her own direction, it felt significant to receive a gift about navigation. Maybe Evelyn saw something in her that she hadn't seen in herself, someone who was still searching for where she belonged. The next morning, Christmas Day, they allowed themselves exactly 2 hours to exchange gifts. Cameron gave Gabrielle a top-of-the-line laptop for work, and she gave him a first-edition book about entrepreneurship, before diving back into work. The tech-forward implementation plan was finalized by noon. Gabrielle assembled her team via conference call and laid out exactly what needed to happen over the next 3 weeks. No one complained about working during the holidays. The energy was electric. Everyone could feel they were on the verge of something significant. December 26th, the real work began. Gabrielle and a team of 5 developers descended on TechForward's trial division offices. They spent 12-hour days installing the Unity platform, training staff, integrating systems, and troubleshooting problems. Cameron coordinated from Hayes Technologies headquarters, managing resources and handling client communications. They talked multiple times a day, updating each other on progress and challenges. The integration with their inventory system is taking longer than expected, Gabrielle reported on day 3. We might need another developer. I'll send Thomas. He's the best we have for database work. Thank you. How are things there? Busy. Your customer service overhaul is already showing results. Client satisfaction is up 18% this month. That's excellent. Keep pushing that data. We'll need it for the full tech-forward pitch. By day 7 they were ahead of schedule. The Unity platform was installed, integrated, and running smoothly. Training was complete. The trial division staff were already reporting improved efficiency. Patricia Morrison came to observe on day 10, her expression skeptical but open. Show me what you've done, she said simply. Gabrielle walked her through the entire system, demonstrating how 17 previously incompatible software platforms now communicated seamlessly through the Unity interface. Customer service tickets that used to take 3 days to resolve were now handled in hours. Data that was previously siloed across departments was now accessible in real time. Patricia's skepticism gradually transformed into genuine interest. This is exactly what I needed. Better, actually. You've solved problems I didn't even know I had. That's because we lived those same problems, Gabrielle said. We built this platform to save our own company. Everything you're seeing came from real operational pain points. By the end of the demonstration, Patricia was nodding. I'm ready to discuss a company-wide contract. Assuming performance metrics hold over the next week. They will, Gabrielle promised. That night, Gabrielle returned to the penthouse exhausted but exhilarated. Cameron was waiting with Chinese takeout and champagne. We're celebrating? She asked. We're celebrating. Patricia Morrison's assistant called. She's drafting a $50 million contract for full company implementation. Gabrielle sank onto the couch, the reality of what they'd accomplished finally hitting her. $50 million. Cameron, that's enough to stabilize Hayes Technologies completely. Enough to hire back the people we had to let go. Enough to prove we're not just surviving but thriving. Cameron poured champagne into 2 glasses. This is because of you. Your vision, your determination, your refusal to accept failure. It's because of both of us. You gave me the opportunity and the authority to implement these changes. You trusted me when you had every reason not to. They clinked glasses and for a moment, their eyes met and held. Something passed between them, unspoken but significant. Gratitude, respect, and something deeper that neither was ready to name. To partnerships, Cameron said softly. To second chances, Gabrielle countered. They drank, and then Gabrielle asked the question that had been bothering her for days. What happens after the tech-forward contract is signed? What do you mean? Our arrangement was through Christmas. Christmas has passed. The company is saved. What happens to us? Cameron set down his glass. What do you want to happen? I asked first. Fair enough. He took a breath. I want you to stay. Not because of our contract, but because you're the best thing that's happened to this company in years. Because I can't imagine running Hayes Technologies without you. Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, you became more than just a consultant or a convenient wife. You became essential. Gabrielle's heart was pounding. Cameron, I'm not asking for romance or promises about the future. I'm asking if you'll stay because this partnership works. Because we make each other better at what we do. Because maybe sometimes the best relationships start from practical necessity and grow into something real. This is real to you? Isn't it real to you? Gabrielle thought about the past 3 weeks. The late nights working together, the way they'd learned to anticipate each other's thoughts, the growing comfort of coming home to someone who understood the pressure and the passion. It was real. More real than any relationship she'd had that started with romance and faded when real life got complicated. It's real to me, she admitted. But I don't know what that means. We got married for business reasons. Everything we've built together has been about saving your company. How do we know it's not just proximity and shared goals? We don't, Cameron said honestly. But I think it's worth finding out. Stay. Work with me. Let's see what this becomes when we're not just surviving, but actually building something together. Gabrielle wanted to say yes. Every logical part of her brain screamed yes. But the part of her that had learned not to trust, the part that had survived foster care and rejection and disappointment, hesitated. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. But they both knew time was a luxury neither of them was comfortable with. Decisions needed to be made. The question was whether they'd make them together or separately. The week between Christmas and New Year's was a blur of activity. The Tech Forward Trial Division reported a 43% increase in customer satisfaction within the first week of Unity platform implementation. Sales team efficiency improved by 37%. Data accessibility issues that had plagued the division for years were resolved almost overnight. Patricia Morrison called Cameron personally on December 30th. I'm ready to move forward with a full company implementation, she said without preamble. $50 million for a 3-year contract with performance bonuses if you maintain satisfaction metrics above 85%. My lawyers are drafting the paperwork now. Cameron had to sit down. $50 million. 3 years of guaranteed income. Hayes Technologies wasn't just saved anymore. It was positioned for genuine growth. Mrs. Morrison, thank you. We won't let you down. I know you won't. Your wife is the most determined business consultant I've ever worked with. Hold on to her, Mr. Hayes. I plan to. After the call ended, Cameron found Gabrielle in the development lab, reviewing code with the programming team. She looked up when he entered, and the smile that lit her face when she saw him made something warm settle in his chest. Good news? She asked, reading his expression. The best. Patricia Morrison approved the full contract. $50 million, 3 years. The lab erupted in cheers. Developers high-fived, someone started playing celebration music, and Gabrielle crossed the room to Cameron with such joy in her eyes that he impulsively pulled her into a hug. She hugged him back, tight and fierce, and for a moment they just stood there, holding each other while their team celebrated around them. "We did it," she whispered against his shoulder. "You did it. We did it together." When they finally pulled apart, Cameron kept his hands on her shoulders. "There's going to be a company celebration tonight. Everyone's invited. Will you come as my wife, not just as my consultant?" Gabrielle's expression softened. "I'll come as both." That evening, Hayes Technologies' main conference room was transformed into a party venue. Employees filled the space, laughing and celebrating their survival and success. Music played, food and drinks flowed, and the atmosphere was electric with relief and possibility. Cameron stood at the front of the room and called for attention. 3 weeks ago, this company was on the verge of collapse, he began. "We were in debt, losing clients, and days away from foreclosure. I want to thank every person in this room for the incredible work you've done to turn that situation around. Your dedication, your creativity, your willingness to work insane hours to meet impossible deadlines. That's what saved us." Applause filled the room. "But I especially want to thank one person." Cameron looked directly at Gabrielle. "My wife, Gabrielle Hayes, came into my life at exactly the moment I needed someone who could see clearly what I'd been too close to notice. She challenged me, pushed this company to be better, and designed the Unity platform that just landed us the biggest contract in Hayes Technologies history. Gabrielle, would you come up here?" Gabrielle made her way to the front, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and pride. "I have an announcement," Cameron continued. "Effective immediately, Gabrielle is being promoted from consultant to Chief Operating Officer of Hayes Technologies. She'll be overseeing all platform development, customer experience, and strategic partnerships." The room exploded in applause. Gabrielle looked at Cameron with wide eyes. "You didn't tell me you were going to do that," she said under her breath. "I wanted it to be a surprise. Do you accept?" "Of course I accept." As the party continued, employees approached Gabrielle to congratulate her and thank her for saving their jobs. Jennifer Chin, now VP of Customer Experience, gave her a heartfelt hug. "You changed my life," Jennifer said. "I was stuck in a dead-end position, and you saw potential in me that I didn't see in myself." "Thank you. You earned that promotion through your own hard work," Gabrielle replied. "I just gave you the opportunity." Later, as the party wound down, Cameron and Gabrielle stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The city sparkled with New Year's Eve preparations, lights reflecting off snow-covered buildings. "How are you feeling, CO Hayes?" Cameron asked, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Gabrielle turned to face him. "Cameron, about what you asked before. About staying. You don't have to answer tonight." "I want to. I've been thinking about it constantly." She took a breath. "I'll stay. Not just because the job is incredible, although it is, but because this partnership we've built, it's the most real thing I've ever had. You see me clearly, all of me, and you still want me here. That's rare. That's worth holding on to." Cameron felt relief wash over him. "I'm glad. I don't know what this is between us, but I know I don't want to lose it." "Neither do I." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city prepare to celebrate a new year. The past month had been chaotic and stressful and absolutely transformative. They'd both changed, grown, discovered capabilities and connections they hadn't known were possible. The question was what came next. Over the following weeks, as they implemented the full tech-forward contract, Cameron and Gabrielle settled into a new rhythm. They were partners in every sense: business, legal, domestic. They shared morning coffee and late-night strategy sessions. They celebrated victories together and tackled problems as a unified team. But there was also an increasing tension, an awareness of each other that went beyond professional respect. Cameron noticed how Gabrielle's eyes lit up when she solved a complex problem. Gabrielle noticed how Cameron's rare smiles transformed his whole face. They were careful not to acknowledge it, afraid that naming it might ruin what they'd built. One evening in mid-January, as they worked late in the penthouse, Gabrielle looked up from her laptop to find Cameron watching her. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. I was just thinking about how different my life is now compared to 2 months ago." "Better or worse?" "Infinitely better. Complicated, but better." Gabrielle set aside her laptop. "Cameron, can I ask you something personal?" "Always." "Do you regret the way we started? The arrangement, the contract marriage?" Cameron considered the question carefully. "I regret that circumstances forced us both into a desperate situation. But I don't regret the outcome. If we'd met under normal circumstances, I probably would have been too cautious to hire you. You would have been too proud to accept help from someone like me. Our desperation gave us permission to take a risk on each other. I never thought about it that way. Sometimes the best things come from the worst situations. Not because the situation was good, but because it strips away all the pretense and fear and forces you to be honest about what you really need. Gabrielle felt tears prick her eyes. I needed you. I needed this job, this partnership, this chance to prove what I'm capable of. And I needed someone who would challenge me to be better than I was. Cameron moved to sit beside her on the couch. Gabrielle, I know our relationship started as a transaction. But it doesn't have to stay that way. We get to decide what this becomes. What do you want it to become? I want it to become whatever feels right for both of us. No pressure, no expectations. Just possibility. Gabrielle looked at this man who'd given her a second chance, who'd trusted her with his company, who'd become her partner in ways that had nothing to do with legal paperwork. She thought about all the reasons she'd learned not to trust people, not to believe in fairy tale endings. And then she thought about how Cameron had proven day after day that he was someone worth trusting. I'm scared, she admitted. I've never had anything like this before. I don't know how to do this without ruining it. Neither do I. So maybe we figure it out together the same way we figured out how to save your company. One day at a time, making decisions that feel right, course correcting when we make mistakes. That's a very analytical approach to a relationship. Cameron laughed. We're both analytical people. Why would our relationship be any different? Gabrielle found herself laughing too. Fair point. As January turned into February, the relationship between Cameron and Gabrielle continued to evolve. They grew more comfortable with casual touches, with inside jokes, with the domestic intimacy of shared space and shared goals. But they still hadn't crossed the line from partnership to romance. Until Valentine's Day. Cameron made reservations at an elegant restaurant, told Gabrielle to dress up, and refused to answer any questions about his plans. When she emerged from her room in a stunning red dress that made his breath catch, he knew he was in trouble. Over dinner they talked about everything except work. Childhood memories, dreams for the future, books and movies and music. They discovered shared tastes and surprising differences. They laughed more than Cameron could remember laughing in years. As dessert arrived, Cameron reached across the table and took Gabrielle's hand. I have something I need to say, he began. I know we started this as an arrangement. A solution to mutual problems. But Gabrielle, somewhere along the way you became the most important person in my life. Not because you saved my company, although you did. But because you see me clearly, all my flaws and fears, and you still believe I can be better than I am. Gabrielle's eyes were shining. Cameron, I'm not asking you to change anything about our relationship if you're not ready. But I need you to know that what I feel for you is real. It's not gratitude or convenience or professional respect. I think it might be love. And I needed to tell you that even if you're not ready to hear it. For a long moment, Gabrielle just looked at him, tears streaming silently down her face. Then she laughed, a sound caught between joy and disbelief. You think it might be love? She repeated. Cameron, I'm absolutely certain it's love. I've been in love with you since you stood up to your entire executive team to defend my restructuring plan. Maybe even before that. I just didn't think I was allowed to say it. Why wouldn't you be allowed? Because people like me don't get fairy tale endings. Foster kids who grew up with nothing don't marry billionaires and fall in love and live happily ever after. That's not how real life works. Cameron stood and moved to her side of the table, kneeling beside her chair. Maybe that's not how real life usually works. But maybe we get to write our own ending. Maybe we get to decide that desperation led us to each other, and love gets to keep us together. Gabrielle cupped his face in her hands. I love you. I'm terrified and completely sure at the same time, but I love you. I love you too. And I'm just as terrified, so we'll be scared together. He kissed her then, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as weeks of restrained attraction finally found release. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and smiling. Should we go home? Gabrielle whispered. Definitely. That night, their relationship finally became everything it had been building toward. Partnership, friendship, and romance all woven together into something neither had expected but both desperately needed. Are you rooting for Cameron and Gabrielle? Do you believe in second chances and love that grows from unexpected places? Comment below and subscribe so you don't miss the beautiful conclusion of their journey. Because what happens next will restore your faith in happy endings. 6 months passed. Hayes Technologies went from survival mode to genuine prosperity. The tech-forward contract was so successful that 3 more major corporations approached them for Unity platform implementations. Revenue increased by 340%. The company expanded, hiring back everyone they'd laid off and adding 50 new positions. Gabrielle thrived as CEO. She implemented innovative customer service protocols that became industry best practices. Under her leadership, Hayes Technologies won Most Innovative Tech Company from Business Insider and Best Workplace from Chicago Business Journal. Cameron and Gabrielle's relationship deepened in ways neither had imagined possible. They learned each other's rhythms, supported each other's ambitions, and built a genuine partnership that balanced professional collaboration with personal intimacy. But there was one conversation they'd been avoiding: what to do about their marriage. Legally, they were still married based on a contract that was supposed to be temporary. Emotionally, they were committed in ways that had nothing to do with paperwork. But they'd never actually discussed whether they wanted to stay married or get divorced and start over properly. In late June, Evelyn Hayes invited them to lunch. Over tea and sandwiches in her garden, she looked at them both with knowing eyes. "I want to talk about your marriage," she said bluntly. Cameron and Gabrielle exchanged nervous glances. "What about it?" Cameron asked. "I want to know if it's real. Not legally real, obviously it's that. But emotionally, spiritually real. Because if it is, I think we should have a proper celebration. And if it's not, we need to address that too." Gabrielle took a breath. "Evelyn, when Cameron and I got married, it was because we both desperately needed something the other could provide. A transaction, essentially. But somewhere along the way it became real. Very real. I love your grandson. I choose him every day not because of any contract, but because he's become the most important person in my life. And you, Cameron?" "Grandmother, marrying Gabrielle was the best decision I ever made. Yes, it started as a solution to a problem. But it became the foundation of everything good in my life. She's my partner, my best friend, and the person I want to spend every day with. That's as real as it gets." Evelyn smiled, her eyes soft with affection. "Then I think you should get married again. Properly this time. With a real ceremony, family and friends, vows that you write yourselves and mean with your whole hearts." "We're already married," Cameron pointed out. "You're legally married. I'm talking about a wedding. A celebration of the love you've built together. Your father and I renewed our vows 3 times during our marriage. Every renewal was a way of saying, I choose you again, knowing everything I know now. That's what I want for you both." Gabrielle felt tears gathering. The idea of marrying Cameron again, this time not out of desperation but out of love, felt overwhelmingly right. "I would like that," she said softly. Cameron reached for her hand. "So would I." They planned the wedding for Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after their courthouse ceremony. This time there was no rush, no desperation. Just joy and anticipation. Gabrielle invited the few friends she'd made in Chicago and was surprised when Jennifer Chen insisted on being her maid of honor. Cameron invited business associates, employees, and distant relatives who'd grown closer over the past year. On Christmas Eve morning, Gabrielle stood in Evelyn's guest room, looking at herself in the mirror. Her wedding dress was elegant but simple, a flowing white gown with delicate beading. Nothing like the maroon business dress she'd worn to the courthouse. Evelyn came in holding a small box. "I wanted to give you this before the ceremony. It was my mother's and she gave it to me on my wedding day." Inside the box was a delicate silver bracelet with tiny charms. A compass, a key, a heart. "The compass to help you find your way," Evelyn explained. "The key because love opens doors you didn't know existed. And the heart because that's what you're giving each other today." Gabrielle hugged her mother-in-law, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you. For everything. For pushing Cameron to find someone, for welcoming me into your family, for making me feel like I belong somewhere. You do belong, dear. You always did. You just needed to find the right place to land." The ceremony was held in Evelyn's beautifully decorated living room, the same room where they'd spent their first Christmas Eve together. But this time, instead of nervous strangers playing roles, they were genuinely in love. As Gabrielle walked down the makeshift aisle, Cameron's eyes filled with tears. She was beautiful, yes. But more than that, she was his. Not because of a contract but because they'd chosen each other every day for a year. The officiant spoke about love that grows from unlikely beginnings, about partnerships built on trust and mutual respect. Then it was time for their vows. Cameron went first, his voice steady but emotional. "Gabrielle, 1 year ago today I married you because I was desperate and you were my only hope. Today I'm marrying you because you're my greatest joy. You challenged me to be better, pushed me to grow, and loved me even when I didn't deserve it. You saved my company, but more importantly, you saved me from a life of empty success. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine, and to choose you every day for the rest of my life. Gabrielle's hands were shaking as she began her vows. Cameron, I came into your life with nothing. No job, no home, no hope. You gave me all of those things. But the greatest gift you gave me was believing I was worth trusting with something you loved. You saw my potential before I saw it myself. You gave me room to be fully myself, flaws and intensity and all. I promised to be your partner, your advocate, and your biggest supporter. I promised to challenge you when you need it and comfort you when you don't. I promised to build a life with you that's based not on what we needed from each other, but on what we choose to give each other every day. They exchanged rings, different from the simple bands Cameron had bought in panic a year ago. These rings were custom-made with inscriptions inside, from desperation to devotion in Cameron's and from stranger to soulmate in Gabrielle's. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife this time, Cameron kissed Gabrielle with all the love and passion that had been building for a year. The room erupted in applause and cheers. At the reception, speeches were made. Jennifer Chin talked about Gabrielle's transformative leadership and her genuine kindness. One of the developers shared how Gabrielle's Unity platform had not only saved jobs but created opportunities for innovation they'd never imagined. Evelyn's speech made everyone cry. I manipulated my grandson into finding a wife by Christmas, she admitted. I'm not proud of the manipulation, but I'm extraordinarily proud of the result. Cameron and Gabrielle, you took my desperate attempt at matchmaking and turned it into something beautiful. You proved that sometimes the best love stories don't start with romance. They start with mutual need and grow into mutual devotion. You are proof that second chances exist, that people can change, and that love is worth fighting for. As Cameron and Gabrielle danced their first dance as a married couple for the second time, he whispered in her ear, do you ever think about how differently this could have gone? All the time. If you'd hired a different consultant, if I'd responded to a different ad, if we'd been less desperate or more cautious. But we weren't. We were exactly desperate enough to take a crazy risk on each other. Best risk I ever took. Same. They danced, surrounded by people who'd become family, in a house that had become a second home, celebrating a love that had started as a transaction and become everything. Later that night, as they drove back to their penthouse, they'd bought a new place together, one that felt like theirs rather than just Cameron's. Gabrielle looked at her husband in the soft glow of Christmas lights lining the streets. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For seeing me. For trusting me. For giving me a reason to believe in happy endings. Cameron brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Thank you for saving me in more ways than I can count. For being brilliant and determined and exactly what I needed, even when I didn't know I needed it. As they pulled into their building's parking garage, Gabrielle said, you know what I realized today? What? Our wedding vows don't expire this time. No contract end date, no conditions to meet. Just us choosing each other for as long as we both shall live. Sounds perfect to me. And it was. The new year brought new challenges and opportunities. Hayes Technologies was approached by a venture capital firm interested in buying a 30% stake in the company for a staggering amount of money. It was an opportunity to expand globally, to take the Unity platform to markets they couldn't reach alone. Cameron and Gabrielle spent weeks reviewing the offer, consulting lawyers and financial advisors. The decision was complicated, with valid arguments on both sides. One evening in February, as they reviewed documents in their home office, Cameron set down his pen and looked at Gabrielle. What do you think we should do? He asked. Honestly, I think we should accept the offer. But I'm afraid. Of what? Of losing what makes Hayes Technologies special. Right now, we control everything. We make decisions based on what's right for our employees and clients, not just what's profitable. If we bring in outside investors, will we lose that? Cameron nodded slowly. I have the same fear. But I also think about the opportunities we're missing. The clients we could serve, the innovations we could develop if we had more resources. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. Let's sleep on it, Gabrielle suggested. We don't have to decide tonight. But sleep was elusive. Both lay awake thinking about the implications of their choice. The next morning, Gabrielle came to breakfast with a new perspective. I think we should counteroffer. Accept the investment but with conditions that protect our company culture and decision-making authority. We get the resources we need without sacrificing our values. Cameron looked at her with admiration. That's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Because you were too focused on the binary choice, accept or decline. Sometimes the best answer is to create a third option. They spent the next week negotiating terms that would bring in capital while preserving their control over company culture, employee policies, and ethical standards. The venture capital firm agreed, impressed by Gabrielle and Cameron's commitment to maintaining their principles. But the negotiation process revealed something unexpected. During one particularly heated meeting, a venture capitalist made a dismissive comment about Gabrielle's role in the company. "Mr. Hayes, with all due respect, allowing your wife to make major business decisions could be seen as nepotism. Investors might be concerned about the professionalism of your leadership structure." Cameron's response was immediate and fierce. "With all due respect, my wife was this company's chief operating officer before she was my wife. She earned her position through her strategic vision, her leadership abilities, and her track record of results. If you question her qualifications, you're questioning the very success that made Hayes Technologies attractive to investors. And if that's your position, this meeting is over." The room went silent. The venture capitalist backpedaled quickly. "I apologize. I didn't mean to imply." "Yes, you did," Gabrielle interjected calmly. "You assumed I hold my position because of my marriage rather than my merit. But here are the facts. I designed the Unity platform that generates 65% of our current revenue. I restructured operations that saved this company from bankruptcy. I negotiated the tech-forward contract that every investor uses as evidence of our market value. My marriage to Cameron is separate from my professional competence." The venture capitalist looked chastened. "You're absolutely right. I apologize for my assumption." After the meeting, as they walked to their car, Cameron was still angry. "I can't believe he said that." "I can't. People make assumptions based on relationships all the time." Gabrielle squeezed his hand. "But thank you for defending me. And for being angry on my behalf. Always. Your success is not a reflection of nepotism. It's a reflection of your brilliance." But the encounter stuck with Gabrielle. That night, she brought up a concern that had been bothering her. "Cameron, do you ever worry that people don't take me seriously because we're married? Some people might not. But anyone who works with you quickly realizes how capable you are. But what about future opportunities? What if other companies want to hire me, but they assume I'm only valuable because I'm your wife?" Cameron's face fell. "Are you thinking about leaving Hayes Technologies?" "No. But I also don't want to be defined solely by our company. I want my own professional identity, separate from being Mrs. Cameron Hayes." "What are you suggesting?" Gabrielle took a breath. "I want to start a consulting firm. Part-time at first, working with companies that need restructuring help. I'd still be COO at Hayes Technologies, but I'd also have my own client base, my own reputation built on my own work." Cameron was quiet for a long moment. "I love that idea. But I'm also afraid." "Of what?" "Of losing you. If you build your own successful company, will you still want to be part of mine?" Gabrielle moved to sit beside him on the couch. "Cameron, I'm not leaving you or Hayes Technologies. I'm expanding. There's a difference. I want to have something that's entirely mine while still being your partner in what we've built together." "I understand. And I support you. I need you to know that my fear of losing you is real, even if it's not rational. Your fear is understandable. But trust me when I say I'm not going anywhere. I'm just growing in a new direction." Over the next months, Gabrielle launched her consulting firm, Thompson Strategic Solutions. Her first clients were small tech companies facing challenges similar to what Hayes Technologies had overcome. She worked with them on evenings and weekends, maintaining her full-time role as COO while building her own business. Cameron watched with pride as Gabrielle's reputation grew. Business magazines featured her as an expert in corporate turnarounds. She was invited to speak at conferences. Her firm attracted high-profile clients impressed by her track record. But he also noticed the toll it was taking. Gabrielle worked constantly, sleeping only 4 or 5 hours a night, surviving on coffee and determination. One evening in June, Cameron found her asleep at her desk again, this time at home rather than at the office. He woke her gently. "Gabrielle, you're burning out. You're trying to be COO, consultant, wife, and superwoman all at once. Something has to give." "I can handle it." "No, you can't. Not at this pace." Cameron knelt beside her chair. "I'm not saying give up your consulting firm. I'm saying you need to set boundaries. Hire help. Learn to delegate. The same advice you give your clients." Gabrielle rubbed her eyes, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. "You're right. I've been so focused on proving I can do everything that I forgot to ask whether I should." "What do you need?" "I need a partner for my consulting firm. Someone who can handle the day-to-day operations while I focus on strategy and client relationships. Then find one. Interview, hire the best person for the job, and give yourself permission to not carry everything alone. Within 2 weeks, Gabrielle hired a brilliant young analyst named Priya Sharma to serve as her partner in Thomson Strategic Solutions. Priya was hungry, talented, and brought fresh perspectives that complemented Gabrielle's experience. The partnership transformed the firm. With Priya handling operations, Gabrielle could focus on high-level strategy and maintain balance between her various roles. She started sleeping more, taking time for herself, actually enjoying the success she'd built. One Saturday morning in August, Cameron woke to find Gabrielle still in bed beside him at 9 a.m., a rare occurrence. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked, concerned. "I'm feeling great. I decided to take the morning off. No work, no urgent emails, just existing." Cameron pulled her close. "I'm proud of you. For building something amazing and for knowing when to slow down. I learned from the best. You've shown me that success doesn't mean sacrificing everything else that matters." They spent the morning together, cooking breakfast, reading the newspaper, enjoying the simple pleasure of unscheduled time. It was the kind of ordinary moment that felt extraordinary because of how rare it had become. That afternoon, Evelyn called asking them to come for dinner. When they arrived, she had a surprise. She'd been documenting their journey in a photo album, from their courthouse wedding through their real ceremony to recent business achievements. "I want you to remember where you started," Evelyn said, showing them pictures. "Not because the beginning was better, but because seeing how far you've come makes the present more meaningful." Looking at the photos, Gabrielle saw the journey clearly: 2 desperate strangers in a courthouse, becoming partners in business, then partners in life. Every photo showed their growing comfort with each other, their increasing happiness, their transformation from transaction to genuine love. "We look so different in these early pictures," she observed. "You look scared," Evelyn said bluntly. "Both of you. Scared of failing, scared of trusting each other, scared of hope." "And now?" Cameron asked. "Now you look like people who found exactly where they belong." As they drove home that night, Gabrielle thought about Evelyn's words. For someone who'd spent her whole life not belonging anywhere, the idea that she'd found her place was both comforting and slightly terrifying. "Do you ever worry that we're too happy?" she asked Cameron suddenly. "Like we've used up our quota of good luck?" "That's your foster care trauma talking," Cameron said gently. "You're waiting for the other shoe to drop because good things always got taken away from you as a child." "Maybe. Gabrielle, we earned this happiness. Through hard work, through choosing each other, through building something real. It's not luck that's going to run out. It's the natural result of the life we've created together." "I hope you're right." "I'm right. And even if challenges come, and they will, we'll face them together. That's what partnership means." Gabrielle leaned her head against his shoulder as they drove through the city they'd both come to love. She thought about how a year and a half ago she'd been alone, unemployed, and terrified. Now she had a husband who loved her, a career that fulfilled her, and the kind of stability she'd never imagined possible. It was almost too good to be true. But Cameron was right. They'd earned it, and she was going to trust that they deserved to keep it. 18 months had passed since that desperate Christmas when Gabrielle and Cameron had made a calculated risk to marry strangers to solve their immediate problems. Now, in June, they stood in Hayes Technologies' brand new headquarters, a building they'd purchased and renovated to accommodate their growing team. The company had transformed beyond recognition. Over 500 employees, contracts with major corporations across 3 continents, and a reputation as one of the most innovative and employee-friendly tech companies in the industry. Gabrielle's consulting firm, Thomson Strategic Solutions, operated from the same building but as an independent entity. Her team had helped 37 companies restructure successfully, earning her recognition as one of the top business strategists in the country. But more important than professional success was the life they'd built together. Cameron and Gabrielle had found a rhythm that balanced work intensity with genuine rest. They traveled together, hosted dinners with friends, and actually took weekends off occasionally. On a sunny Friday afternoon in June, Cameron called an all-staff meeting in the main auditorium. 500 employees gathered, curious and slightly nervous. Company-wide meetings usually meant major announcements. Cameron stood at the front of the room with Gabrielle beside him. He took a breath and began. 18 months ago, this company was failing. We were in debt, losing clients, and days away from bankruptcy. I stood in this position then, terrified and desperate, with no clear path forward. He paused, looking out at the faces of people who'd trusted him through the crisis and the recovery. Today I stand here with very different news. Hayes Technologies has been approached with an acquisition offer. A major corporation wants to buy our company for a substantial amount of money. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Cameron raised his hand for quiet. Before anyone panics, let me be clear. We are not accepting the offer. Hayes Technologies is not for sale. Relief was visible on faces throughout the room. But the offer made me think about what we've built here and why it matters. We're not just a tech company. We're a community of people who believe in innovation, integrity, and taking care of each other. We proved that a company can be both profitable and principled. And I have no intention of selling that vision to anyone. Applause filled the auditorium. However, Gabrielle and I have been discussing something else. A new direction for our leadership structure. Gabrielle stepped forward to speak. As many of you know, I've been building my consulting firm while serving as COO here. It's been incredibly rewarding but also challenging to balance both roles effectively. After much discussion, Cameron and I have decided to implement a co-CEO structure. We'll both serve as equal leaders of Hayes Technologies, with different areas of focus but shared decision-making authority. Cameron continued, "This isn't about titles or ego. It's about recognizing that this company succeeds because of partnership. Gabrielle and I work best when we're collaborating as equals. We want our leadership structure to reflect that reality." The announcement was met with enthusiastic support. Employees had watched Cameron and Gabrielle work together for over a year. The co-CEO structure simply formalized what everyone already knew. They were stronger together than either could be alone. After the meeting, Jennifer Chin approached them with a smile. "I think this is perfect. You two have always led as partners anyway. Now the structure matches the reality." That evening, as they celebrated the announcement with Evelyn over dinner, the older woman raised her glass in a toast. "To my grandson and his brilliant wife, who took a manipulative old woman's scheme and turned it into something beautiful. You've built a company that matters, a marriage that works, and a life that proves second chances are real." "To second chances," Cameron echoed. "To taking risks on strangers," Gabrielle added with a smile. They clinked glasses, and Evelyn looked at them both with undisguised affection. "You know, when I put that marriage condition in the trust fund, I half expected Cameron to hire an actress and fake the whole thing." Cameron nearly choked on his wine. "Grandmother. It's true. I was prepared to call your bluff. But then you brought Gabrielle to dinner and I saw something real between you even then. Maybe you didn't see it yet, but I did. The way you looked at each other, the way you communicated without words, the way you fit together despite having just met. That's when I knew my scheme might actually work." "You're terrifyingly perceptive," Gabrielle said. "I'm old and I've seen enough love stories to recognize the real thing, even when it's disguised as a business arrangement." Evelyn reached across the table to squeeze both their hands. "I'm proud of what you've built. Not just the company but yourselves. You're both better people than you were 18 months ago." Later that night, Cameron and Gabrielle stood on the balcony of their penthouse, looking out at the Chicago skyline. It was the same view they'd had from Cameron's old apartment, but everything else had changed. "Do you remember standing here the first night you moved in?" Cameron asked. "You were so nervous and trying to hide it." "I remember. I kept thinking I'd made a terrible mistake, that this arrangement was going to blow up in my face. And instead I found everything I didn't know I was looking for. A partner, a purpose, a home." Cameron pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I love you. Not for saving my company, although you did. Not for being brilliant, although you are. I love you because you make me want to be better than I am. You challenge me and support me in equal measure. You're the best decision I ever made." Gabrielle turned in his arms to face him. "I love you because you saw potential in me when I couldn't see it myself. You gave me opportunities one never would have had otherwise. You believed in me when I was at my lowest point. You're the reason I believe in second chances." They kissed, soft and sweet, with all the time in the world because they weren't desperate anymore. They weren't strangers reaching for any solution that might save them. They were partners who'd built something real from the ashes of their separate desperation. "Should we go inside?" Gabrielle asked eventually. "It's getting cold." "In a minute. I want to remember this moment. This view, this feeling, knowing that everything we have, we built together." So they stood there a while longer, watching the city lights, comfortable in silence and in each other's presence. The next morning, a Saturday, they allowed themselves the luxury of sleeping in. When they finally emerged from their bedroom, Gabrielle made coffee while Cameron cooked breakfast, a domestic rhythm they'd perfected over months of practice. "What should we do today?" Cameron asked, setting scrambled eggs on the table. "I was thinking we could just, nothing. No work, no obligations, just exist together. That sounds perfect. They spent the day doing ordinary things. Reading, watching movies, taking a walk through the park. It was the kind of day that would seem boring to anyone else but felt precious to them because of how hard they'd worked to earn this peace. That evening, as they settled on the couch with wine and snacks, Gabrielle said, "I want to talk about the future." "Okay. What about it?" "We've been so focused on saving the company and building our careers that we haven't talked about other things. Like whether we want children or where we want to live long term, or what our life looks like in 10 years. Cameron set down his wine glass. "What do you want?" "I want children. Not right now, but eventually. I want to give a child the stable, loving home I never had." Gabrielle's voice was soft but certain. "And I want to keep working to have a career that matters to me. I want both if that's possible." "It's possible. And for what it's worth, I want children too. I want to be the kind of father mine was, present, supportive, proud of his family." Cameron took her hand. "I want to build a life with you that includes both our professional ambitions and our personal dreams. What about where we live? This penthouse is beautiful, but it's not really a family home. Then we find a home that works for the family we want to build. A house with a yard in a good school district, where our kids can grow up with the kind of stability we both needed." They spent the rest of the evening talking about the future they wanted to create together. Children, maybe 2 or 3. A house in the suburbs but close enough to the city for work. Continuing to grow their businesses while also being present for their family. Travel, adventure, building a life rich in both professional success and personal fulfillment. As midnight approached, Cameron looked at Gabrielle and felt overwhelming gratitude. 18 months ago, he'd placed a desperate advertisement looking for a temporary solution to a complex problem. He'd expected to find someone willing to play a role for a paycheck. Instead, he'd found a partner who challenged him to be better. A brilliant strategist who saved his company. A woman who became his best friend, his lover, his equal in all things. A person who transformed his life in ways he could never have predicted. "What are you thinking about?" Gabrielle asked, noticing his expression. "About how the best things in my life came from the worst moment. About how desperation led me to make a crazy decision that turned out to be the smartest thing I ever did. You know what I think about sometimes? What if I hadn't responded to your advertisement? What if I'd been too proud or too scared to take that risk? Then we both would have lost out on this. On us." "Exactly. Which is why I believe everything happens for a reason. Not because some cosmic force planned it, but because sometimes desperation gives us the courage to take risks we'd normally avoid. And sometimes those risks lead us exactly where we need to be." Cameron kissed her forehead. "I'm glad we were both desperate enough to be brave." "Me too." As they prepared for bed that night, Gabrielle thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate email response to a stranger's advertisement, to a courthouse wedding, to a real marriage built on genuine love. From unemployment and bankruptcy to professional success and financial stability. From 2 people alone in the world to a partnership that made them both stronger. She thought about the foster child she'd been, the one who never believed in fairy tales or happy endings. And she thought about the woman she'd become, who'd learned that happy endings were possible if you were willing to work for them. Cameron came up behind her as she stood at the bathroom mirror, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Ready for bed?" "Ready for whatever comes next," she corrected. "As long as it's with you. Always with me. That's the deal we made, remember? For better or worse, richer or poorer, in sickness and in health." "I remember. And unlike our first wedding, I actually mean those vows now." "So do I." "Every word." They climbed into bed, and as Gabrielle settled into Cameron's arms, she felt a peace she'd never known was possible. This was home. Not the penthouse, not the city, but this person beside her, this partnership they'd built, this love that had grown from the most unlikely beginning. Outside, Chicago sparkled in the summer night. Inside, 2 people who'd found each other through desperation slept peacefully, knowing they'd built something real, something lasting, something worth all the risk and fear it had taken to get here. Their story had started with a desperate advertisement and a calculated risk. But it had become a testament to second chances, to the power of partnership, and to the reality that sometimes the best love stories don't start with romance. Sometimes they start with mutual need and grow into mutual devotion. Sometimes they start with strangers and end with soulmates. Sometimes they start with a business arrangement and become the realest thing in your life. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, they start with desperation and end with exactly the love you never knew you needed.